Hi, welcome back to Recently Played Podcast. As you can see, this is no longer a podcast. We're now on YouTube, so let's see how this goes. I apologize if there's a lot of jump cuts. I might not be able to get everything in one take, but I'm gonna try my best. Let's see how this goes. So today I'm gonna be taking a little trip down memory lane and breaking down my favorite songs from 2019. Should be a fun time. Let's do this. At number 20, we have Pups feat. A$AP Rocky by A$AP Ferg. Pups is a demonstration of the power of chemistry in hip-hop. In the hierarchy of the A$AP mob, Rocky and Ferg are president and vice president respectively. But this kind of thinking makes it seem like one of them is a better rapper than the other. And even though A$AP Rocky's popularity far outweighs A$AP Ferg's, I don't necessarily think of him as better. This is because they have such contrasting styles and sounds. It's really to the group's advantage to have members that are just different from one another. Different qualities in their voices do wonders to keep things interesting. When those qualities are noticeable enough, it lets the audience develop their own sense of identity for the individual members of the group, and at that point, the listeners have no choice but to be invested. Everything I've just said can be applied to the song Pups by A$AP Ferg. We hear the camaraderie and the friendship of the two rappers that have built their careers side by side one another. Although it's advertised as an A$AP Ferg song feat. A$AP Rocky, Pups feels more like a collaboration. The constant back and forth trade-offs between the two rappers go well beyond the standard features that we're used to hearing, where the guest will just dip in and out of the song at a specified time and place. A$AP Rocky's contribution is deeply embedded in the song. The track simply just doesn't exist without him. And this kind of chemistry can only come from collaborators with years of experience working together under their belts. Together, they've experienced fame and success, and they've mourned the passing of some of their closest friends. A song like this can't be fabricated. You can't just hit record and expect two artists that have never met each other to have this kind of chemistry with one another. I really like how Pups is entirely built around this DMX sample, which gives it this 90s hip-hop throwback feel. Overall, it's fun, badass, and a short and sweet track that really stood out to me among the wave after wave of rap music that we got in 2019. It shows that even though their different sounds have given them quite different careers in the music industry, there's a bond between them that can't be broken. Alright, number 19. Dawn Chorus by Thom Yorke. If there's one thing Thom Yorke does really well, it's portraying debilitating sadness. And the track Dawn Chorus off of 2019's Anima might just be the saddest that I've heard Thom since True Love Waits in 2016, the album closer of A Moon-Shaped Pool and a rework of a song that had only been recorded live before that. Dawn Chorus stood out to me mainly because of the sound of Thom Yorke's vocals. Instead of his signature falsetto, we hear him not singing at all, but speaking to us. And it really does sound like he's speaking directly to you, person to person. The illusion of the album is dropped and he's no longer a performer. And this works quite well when the intent is to translate such raw emotions to the listener. He sounds so broken and defeated, but there's a ray of hope. There's something beautiful that he's hanging on to. And that's what I get from this track the most. Clinging on to love relentlessly in the face of a cruel and unforgiving world. It quite subtly builds toward the end of the track, but even then, it feels like it's infinitely moving forward without ever reaching its destination. Number 18, Dearly Departed by Brockhampton. Dearly Departed off of Brockhampton's album Ginger stood out to me as a song that showcases the frustrating anger and sadness that comes when going through a tumultuous time. On this track, the rap crew / boy band examines some of the feelings that maybe went unaddressed on 2018's Iridescence. The loss of a friend and collaborator, someone they couldn't defend and could no longer save. We hear the members of Brockhampton taking responsibility for the actions of ex-member Amir, who was kicked out of the group due to sexual misconduct allegations. When someone lies to you and takes advantage of you in order to cause suffering onto someone else, there's a very specific kind of anger that surfaces from these kinds of scenarios. It's an anger filled with remorse, because you know, as angry as you are at that person, there's something you could have done to prevent their actions. The production of this song has this classic vibe that works well to portray these timeless feelings that Brockhampton explores. There's a lot of great moments on this track where the members are just so passionate and full of emotion, totally ready to explode. There's a nice reckless crash and burn catharsis to it. Number 17, Only Human by Fortet. Fortet is a producer that first got me interested in electronic music. He showed me that dance music can be beautiful and that dance music doesn't necessarily have to be dance music. He has a really nice sense of creativity and playfulness to his work that helps trigger emotional reactions in the listener. Kieran Hebden, also known as Fortet, is a master of space. He is so good at slowly introducing new elements into a song at a steady pace, which gives his music a meditative quality. He creates a space that you as the listener will want to spend time in. It's quite a unique talent that not many electronic producers are able to get right as often as he does. Fortet masterfully demonstrates his talent with the track Only Human. It's a fun, playful, and concise electronic dance song, but I feel like there's an equal amount of substance in it as well. I really like Fortet songs that build around some sort of different element that doesn't quite belong. In this case, it's a group of vocals chanting, but it doesn't sound like vocals that you would be used to hearing in a dance song. They're kind of mundane sounding. Almost like it's a group of people that are being forced to sing Christmas carols together. It sounds messy and in the background, but this kind of makes for a nice juxtaposition. It shifts attention toward the song as a whole and kind of just makes it more fun to listen to. Okay, at number 16, Home by Caribou. I've always been quite fond of Dan Snaith, better known as Caribou. Listening to his versatile discography under the names Caribou, Daphne, and Manitoba has given me the impression that Mr. Snaith just really enjoys music, both listening to and creating it. Sometimes I even feel like he's a stronger DJ than he is a songwriter, and his work with Caribou has always felt a little separate from the world of his 99-hour Spotify playlist. Regardless, Caribou is a wonderful project in how it blends dance, electronic, and rock into something totally fresh and exciting, and I've only grown to like him more after discovering his DJ sets and mixtapes. I was a big fan of Caribou's 2015 album Our Love, and by 2018 I felt like a new release was long overdue. And then out of nowhere, Dan hit us with a brand new song ever so casually. This song was such a great choice to be the first new Caribou music we hear in 4 years. I've got to say that listening to it the first time just made me happy because the song doesn't necessarily sound like Caribou. It sounds like Dan. His signature falsetto voice is pretty much the only thing that he's carried from the old Caribou sound, but that doesn't bother me at all. The song sounds so close to the source material that it was sampled from. It almost sounds like something that would fit better in a DJ mixtape. But I mean this in the best way possible. Not unlike J Dilla's Donuts, he really elevates the sample into becoming something different. Okay, at number 15 we have Runaway by Tiffany Young. In 2019, Tiffany Young set out to do the impossible. She attempted to have a solo career in music after being a K-pop idol. In 2017, the San Francisco-born singer retired from Girls' Generation, one of the most successful K-pop groups of the 2010s. Much like a former child star wanting to be taken seriously as an adult, Tiffany set out to create a new identity for herself in the global mainstream music industry. And in my opinion, her 2019 track Runaway feat. Babyface is a bubblegum mainstream pop song that would give any of today's pop titans a run for their money. As corny as the track is, it sounds very sure of what it is and what it isn't, and the execution is just great. The warm underlying tones sitting beneath an ultra-clean, synthetic-sounding acoustic guitar give it this 90s pop throwback vibe, but then the 21st century edition of some trap hi-hats help pick up the energy. The vocal performances are quite strong here as well. I like the flow of the lyrics in the chorus, and there's a nice little jazzy chord at the end of the chorus. It gives it this calm Sunday morning vibe. The back and forth vocals between Tiffany and her guest feature throughout the track are quite nice as well. It definitely works toward this focused direction. Romantically just dropping everything and leaving the world behind. It's corny, but sometimes corny's what you want. Okay, number 14. Too Much by Carly Rae Jepsen. Carly Rae Jepsen's arc over the last decade is one of my favorite stories of musical redemption. She went from having a mildly annoying one-hit wonder to unleashing an epic pop record with 15 songs that exceeded 2012's Call Me Maybe. I know I'm not alone in having warm feelings when I think back on her 2015 album Emotion, and I think this is because it really helped me genuinely enjoy pop music for what it is. So many pop hits over the decade have grown popular because they bought into a fad or trend at the time. It can be easy to forget about the characteristic sound that defines pop music. That it's a legitimate genre just like any other, full of good and bad, and not just whatever's popular. One of the biggest reasons why Emotion resonated so well with me and many others is that it's simple, well-executed pop that doesn't try too hard to be something that it isn't. And there's something really genuine about how she embraces that simplicity. Her 2019 track Too Much almost perfectly fits the textbook definition of a modern pop song. It sounds like 10 other songs I've already heard before, but even taking all of that into consideration, it's an enjoyable song and it hits pretty hard. Too Much works well because of its execution. The lead synth line that sounds just right, the minimal reggaeton drum beat, and most importantly, it's got a strong vocal hook that Carli pulls off ever so gracefully. And looking a little more closely, there's a subtle sadness to this track. The self-deprecating lyrics about being a hot emotional mess give the song its soul. Carly Rae Jepsen is a little older than your typical pop star, and because of that, her portrayal of loneliness seems a little more authentic. I'm reminded of her 2018 single, Party for One, where she celebrates not needing anyone else to have a good time. On Too Much, she still has that independence, but this time, she's issuing a warning to whoever she lets in. Carli is hyper aware of her tendencies to get needy, obsessive, attached, and self-destructive. And akin to her 2015 song, When I Needed You, where she speaks on the importance of bettering yourself for the sake of you and not someone else, Carli is now wise enough to free herself of guilt and issue an advisory. Number 13, Goodbyes feat. Young Thug by Post Malone. This track just felt like an instant classic from the moment that I heard it. The angelic sounding pads bring us back in time into a jam that sounds like something that could have come out 10 years ago, and that's kind of why this track puts a smile on my face. As with any other strong Post Malone track, it's quite simple and effective. Sometimes Post is just too good at making his music accessible, and Goodbyes is a great example of that. It's so concise, so self-contained, so take it or leave it. Someone can hear just 10 seconds of it and get the gist. It's kind of like a perfect Disney movie that no one can really say anything bad about. Like any great pop song, it's not trying to be anything more than it is, and because of that, it becomes more than it is. The pettiness of his lyricism can be detected right from his first verse, and the drama is quick and easily digestible. The conflict is so clear. It's really a song that anybody could get into without much effort, but I feel the need to stress that achieving this is no easy feat. And speaking of feats, the guest verse from Young Thug just completes the track so nicely. Young Thug wraps up a very successful 2019 and ascends into stardom, smashing his way into the car stereos of parents driving their children to school. His verse is such a great contrast to everything else in the track. Again, much like a Disney movie, he provides the much needed comic relief in the midst of catharsis. But nailing that comic relief is a delicate balance. Zazu, Genie, Baloo, these characters are funny, but they aren't stupid. They still have a lot of soul, and most importantly, they elevate the film by bringing in different emotions. That's kind of why Young Thug does such a great job of playing the quirky side character on Goodbyes. It seems to fill out the song nicely and makes you laugh in the best of ways. Number 12, we have These Nights feat. Rich Brian and Chung by 88 Rising. Sometimes I feel like all of the members of pop hip-hop collective 88 Rising are stronger when the stakes are low. Their Head in the Clouds series of full-length albums act as variety shows that showcase brief snippets of each contributor's talents without delving too deep into their individual personalities. And while I commend Rich Brian's attempt at disproving my last statement on his latest album, The Sailor, I think overall he still fares better on the light, catchy pop hits that 88 Rising delivers so well. You can check out my full review of The Sailor on my Mixcloud page. But even within the world of thematically shallow pop songs, Rich Brian shows us that there's still room for surprises. On these nights, we hear Rich Brian sounding nothing like himself as he sings to us through autotune. It's a little strange at first, but after some time I can say that the song really works without him doing what he does best. The wide, retro-sounding drums and bass combined with Rich Brian's vocals give it an ironic, self-aware corniness that 88 Rising seems to be able to pull off so well. This is all accurately visualized in the track's music video that shows Brian donning a mullet and riding a motorbike at night. So pop music is all about selling us an illusion, making us believe in a fantasy where these people are actually friends that collaborated with one another out of their own free will, and it wasn't just a business decision set up by their managers. And in these nights, I have to say that I really appreciate when the feature goes the extra mile to be part of the song. I got a real sense of value from K-pop star Chung's verse on this track. It didn't seem like a quick in and out business transaction, and most of all, it sounded like she gave a shit about the song. She can be heard building off of Rich Brian's melodies and flow and making them her own, and the result is a super fun and memorable track. Number 11, we have New Kind of Man by OGRE You Asshole. As a fan of modern Japanese music, I have to say that one of the things I look for the most when discovering new artists is tastefulness or lack thereof. Sometimes I find that Japanese artists have a tendency to make things more complicated than they need to be. This isn't necessarily problematic, but it can be if they go too far with it. Some of my favorite musicians from Japan are those that are able to restrain from showcasing their incredible abilities all of the time in order to make enjoyable music to listen to. OGRE You Asshole does quite well in that department. The band with a ridiculous name that makes music that is surprisingly not that ridiculous. Their discography consists of alternative dance rock albums that are a little scaled back and reserved in comparison to a lot of other J-rock and J-pop that I've encountered. In 2019, they took that philosophy to the next level with their delightfully mundane album New Kind of Man. And I think the self-titled single from this album represents that slower, more minimal sound at its strongest. Legendary studio drummer Steve Jordan once said, "Simplicity isn't stupidity." In fact, when things are slowed down and simplified, execution becomes all the more vital. So much more attention is drawn to every note played and nothing is hidden. It's on a track like this that a band can showcase just how good of a band they are and not just the individual talents of its members. Perhaps it's the gentle simplicity that makes this such a beautiful track. Every individual layer supports this somber laziness that they're trying to express with the song. This track reminds me of the feeling of waking up with a hangover and feeling the desire to make some sort of life-altering change. The party's over, there's a huge mess to clean up, you've got long-term goals that you've neglected in favor of short-term enjoyment. You're feeling unfulfilled, seeing that better version of yourself in the distance, but for now, the best you can do is just start to clean up and see how things go. Okay, at number 10 we have Boy With Love feat. Halsey by BTS. BTS is without a doubt the most talked about K-pop group on the planet. Many people who don't even know what K-pop is still have some level of familiarity with BTS. And despite them being a household name, as of 2019, they didn't really have a single that would penetrate the radios to the same degree as other artists with the same level of notoriety. I'm not saying that their 2019 single, Boy With Love feat. Halsey, is that single, but it's the closest that they've ever gotten. K-pop is such a weird take it or leave it genre, and ironically, despite its massive popularity, I wouldn't call it the most accessible for the casual pop listener. It's Boy With Love's accessibility that makes it such a groundbreaking track. Similar to how everyone's mom opened up to rap after hearing Post Malone or Kendrick Lamar, Boy With Love kind of makes you go, huh, so this is BTS. I could get into this. Maybe this whole K-pop thing isn't just for total dorks. The accessibility of Boy With Love is not accomplished cheaply at all. It really is quite a brilliantly crafted song. The hook is established instantaneously and the song never really lets go of it. For a foreign audience, having a melody that they can cling on to when they can't understand the lyrics is vital. The feature from Halsey feels like less of a feature and more of an enhancement, since she's never really given a verse of her own. She kind of just beefs up the catchiness of the chorus and adds a nice different sounding texture with her voice, and as I said before, she helps give us something to cling on to. The catchiness feels well deserved, and that's what makes the song go the extra mile and become stuck in our heads that much longer. It's what makes us smile instead of roll our eyes when this song comes on the radio at a restaurant 5 years from now. Another thing I like about this track is that despite its accessibility, it's so unapologetically BTS and true to who they are. Any fan of the group will tell you that they are just as much as a rap crew as they are a boy band, and I think their best work is when we hear a mix of both. Boy With Love represents that quite well, with 2 rap verses wedged in between the poppy hooks. The track is such a wonderful ode to the spirit of globalization. It's a song without borders. It doesn't necessarily sound stereotypically K-pop. More so, it sounds like a K-pop song meant for the rest of the world, and in that respect, it kind of sits in its own category. Okay, number 9, The London feat. Travis Scott and J. Cole by Young Thug. Here's a track that just has so much going for it. When we examine smash hit hip-hop songs, we find tracks that sometimes compromise their hip-hop identity in favor of something more accessible. But The London captures a wonderfully tasteful sounding balance between the two. We hear 3 beloved voices of modern rap coming together on this track, and it plays to all of their individual strengths, providing a concise and well-balanced mix of all of their sounds in just about 3.5 minutes. It's something that fans of any and all of the 3 rappers will enjoy and not feel tempted to change if it comes on a playlist. First, we have Travis Scott giving us the hook and acting as the track's MC. I think Travis does these kind of apathetic, depressed sounding vocals really well. There's a cool charm to the sadness of his voice that he can achieve with even the most simplistic deliveries. Travis Scott is one of these vocalists that just sounds enjoyable. He doesn't necessarily need to be rapping his ass off. That's a job that he leaves open for J. Cole, who provides a fast and smooth sounding verse. His flow and rhythm is consistent, playful, and clever. He seems to tick all of the boxes that you want in such a short verse. And then we hear Young Thug, who simply does what he does best. Once again, we see that Disney side character return, but it isn't overly silly, and it makes the track that much more dynamic. The track feels like more of a collaboration in that I don't see any one of them in particular as the author. I only realized that it was a Young Thug track when he made it the album closer of his solo release So Much Fun. But really, any one of them could have claimed it as their own. It doesn't always work out when you throw together a bunch of talented people on a track, and what I think makes this one effective is the production from T-. It really brings out those performances from each of them. It is possible to put someone in a room and just turn on the mic, but you need to give them something to work with. Okay, coming in at number 8, we got White Mercedes by Charli XCX. I first fell in love with Charli XCX for her weird, experimental, and more importantly, futuristic sound. And that's what made White Mercedes such a nice surprise. It's such a bland, regular sounding pop song, but sometimes that's what you need to showcase a great performer. The song without her is really nothing special. It sounds like it could be stock music for a crappy wedding video. However, all this does is draw attention to Charli as a performer. And all of that cheesiness about it sounding like it could be in a wedding video really works in her favor. It has that 80s throwback feel without overtly sounding like that's what they're going for. And the self-deprecating lyrics pair so well with the production of the track. So much of Charli's production is undoubtedly cool. It's pop music that hipsters can listen to without fear of judgment. And on a track like White Mercedes, it's nice to hear her reflect on that. It's this moment where she drops the facade and says, "You know guys, maybe I don't feel as cool as I make myself out to be. Maybe sometimes I have the same fears and insecurities as the rest of us." And that striving to become a better version of herself in the bridge is kind of nice and inspiring. It's another one of those tracks that just feels like an instant classic. It's something you've heard before, but in a good way, because it's coming from somebody that you enjoy hearing. Alright, at number 7, we've got Psycho by Red Velvet. After the obnoxious and frankly boring singles Zimzalabim and Oompa Oompa that accompanied the Revi Festivals Part 1 and 2, I was beginning to lose my patience with Red Velvet. I longed for the tasteful pop bangers of their excellent 2017 album Perfect Velvet, but it seemed to me that the goal of Red Velvet was to quickly make their way up the charts and not make memorable releases. When they released the third and final installment of their bland and disappointing Revi series, I did not have high expectations. But within the first few seconds of listening to their single Psycho, I found myself smiling. It already wasn't hard for me to see that this is a great pop song. The plucked strings, arpeggiated synths, and minimal drums provide a simple setup for something memorable. Not unlike Boy With Love, the accessibility of Psycho is truly commendable. The hook really hits hard, and it's not just the English lyrics responsible for that. I feel like the perfect amount of space is taken up in each layer of the track. The group vocals are just so full and in your face, and the sharp trap hi-hat sits so nicely on top of that. Psycho is patient. It doesn't shove anything down your throat, but instead, the track takes its time to grow on you. And in the long run, I found that this gave the song a lot more replay value for me. Bridges can be tough for a lot of K-pop songs. Many times they can be sudden, dramatic left turns, even genre shifts entirely. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, it can be one of the defining characteristics of the genre. Regardless, it's nice to hear how well each section of the track builds upon the last, and the conclusion is quite satisfying. It feels triumphant, and rightfully so considering what came before it. Almost done! Alright, coming in at number 6, we got Left Hand by Beast Coast. Beast Coast's Left Hand was an absolute earthquake of rap talent. Early into 2019, the New York hip-hop collective smacked us in the face with a debut song that is so badass in every way possible. There's so much rapping jam-packed into its 3-minute and 43-second runtime. Left Hand is a track that is just teeming with value. The first few playthroughs were a little surreal for me. It was simply so epic and there was so much to take in. Every member delivers a quick, memorable verse and then ducks out of the way for the next one before you even have time to absorb what just happened. Joey Badass is unquestionably the most well-known of the collective and perhaps the most likely to steal the show, and surprisingly, his verse is almost unrecognizable. He seems to have made an effort to blend in with his bandmates, and I think that this was a very wise decision on his part. Left Hand manages to showcase all of its talented members, and at the same time, we hear each member slightly altering their sound to fit the gritty punk rock vision of the song. Every contribution benefits the song as a whole rather than just any of the individual members. They seem to be on board with the same idea of what they want the song to be, and the end result is a track brimming with confidence. Beast Coast emerged with a debut that doesn't ask for permission, but instead floors it right in your direction and tells you to get the hell out of the way. Okay, getting there. Number 5, we have Amaneki by Ichiko Aoba and Sweet William. I've been listening to Ichiko Aoba for quite a while now, and ever since her phenomenal 2018 album QP, she's become one of my favorite up-and-coming artists. She is such a powerhouse of talent, and recently she has refined the art of translating that talent into really good music. I've always loved how she is so sure of how she wants to present herself as an artist. She's a folkloric character that lives among nature, someone that can see the beauty in the smallest details. When an artist can present themselves so clearly, it opens the door for some great collaborations. You know exactly what they're able to deliver, and that makes it easier to know what they might mix well with. Amaneki is the second collaboration Aoba has had with hip-hop producer Sweet William, the first being 2018's Karakai. Also, I quite liked Sweet William's 2018 album Blue. I thought there were some great examples of soulful jazz hip-hop production on there, and as a producer, he struck me as a strong collaborator. Although they come from different worlds, I get the sense that at times, Sweet William and Ichiko Aoba are trying to say the same things as one another with their music. Because of this, we got a beautiful track like Karakai that really showcases both of their individual strengths. I was happy to hear them take this a step further on their next collaboration, Amaneki. Amaneki takes you to a dream world right from the get-go. Sweet William's production once again matches Aoba so well. She's someone who we rarely ever hear with anything other than her own guitar under her voice. And it's kind of nice to hear a more elaborate composition match her. But Ichiko Aoba is all about minimalism, and I can still get a sense of that on this track. It's far from ever feeling crowded, even though there's so much more going on in comparison to any of her other music. All of the sounds heard on Amaneki contribute to its charm. The brushes on the snare drum, warm rustic sounding piano, muted horns, plucked strings, and Aoba's wonderful classically influenced guitar playing. They all help build a fantasy universe, not unlike one from a Ghibli film. Amaneki is a single that feels like it has the structure of an entire album. It still manages to take you on a journey, and it comes full circle by the end, as would a children's fantasy book. It's so unexpected that a rap producer can create a song that draws those kinds of parallels, and I really like hearing a hip-hop influenced track that makes no effort to make you dance or groove. There's a strong sense of uncompromised artistic vision that is totally fresh and different. Both Amaneki and Karakai are so charming, and I would love to hear another collaboration from these two again. Number 4, we have Yellow feat. Bekon by Rich Brian. The first single off an album carries so much weight with it. It grants the artist the power to tell their audience, hey, this is the new me, deal with it. It's always exciting to get that first impression of what the new era of an artist's work will sound like. Yellow by Rich Brian was perhaps one of the most memorable single releases of the year. It's a track that will catch anyone with the slightest familiarity with Brian's music off guard. Artists like Rich Brian usually only get that one opportunity to present such a dramatically different shift in style. Anytime he does it again from now onwards will be somewhat normalized. It won't have the same shock value attached to it. And even though there are other tracks off of his album The Sailor that perhaps would have been more suited for release as a single, I think Yellow was a great choice. It really showcases a side of him that we haven't seen before, and he makes a point to say that he's through with being a joke. He even takes that sentiment a step further with some of the more self-critical moments of the track. Rich Brian's distorted sing-rap vocals sound tormented and full of anguish as he reflects on the career that he built from playing a character. Yellow is a track that continuously moves forward to each new section without repeating. This kind of song structure is hard to get right and more often ends up sounding convoluted, but Yellow is quite memorable all the way through. It feels like it really elevates to each new section, and the changes feel quite natural. In the middle section of the track, Rich Brian brings back his rapper persona, but it's juxtaposed with the track. It's kind of this angry, cathartic sound where he feels proud of who he is and what he's accomplished, but also unwilling to let the public's perception define who he is. He really sounds like he's got something to prove, and hearing that ambition is quite inspiring. I found Rich Brian's lowbrow lyricism to feel kind of unfitting for most of the polished sound that you'll find on The Sailor, but I think it really works on Yellow. It sounds like he's reflecting on himself as a character. And then the minute of strings at the end is just an absolute pleasure. It seems to reprise all of the subject matter brought up throughout the track without using any words. Alright, number 3, we have Bop by Dababy. In the last few years, we've seen a rapid growth in the mainstream popularity of rap music across the globe unlike ever before. A hip-hop climate like this grants the opportunity for any 15-year-old to add a Lil or Young honorific to their name and blow up overnight with a catchy auto-tune hook and $10 beat. And while this didn't change in 2019, I did notice that as the general hip-hop audience grew a year wiser, their taste began to mature as well. It's inevitable that after a certain amount of time immersed in the genre, a listener will begin to develop their own sense of good and bad. They begin to have a metric for weighing out what they like and don't like. Songs that rely on gimmicks are less effective on them. They begin to have an appreciation for hard-earned talent and originality. This is why 2019 offered the perfect conditions for Charlotte rapper Dababy to rise to being one of the best rappers in the world within a matter of months. With 13 mixtapes under his belt, Dababy had finally owned his craft to a level that makes his music accessible to both the casual and seasoned listeners within the global hip-hop audience. To put it simply, Dababy is a very good rapper. He's also a lot of fun to listen to. Many times, the rap listener will find themselves having to choose between the fun and catchy and the technically proficient. However, Dababy can do both at the same time, and his song Bop is an excellent example of his ability to really carry a track by himself. Dababy doesn't need to sing, and he doesn't need anybody singing for him. He's just that entertaining by himself. He can rap fast, but it still has that fun, roll down the windows and blast the music edge to it. Dababy's confident, in-your-face sound makes the listener feel powerful, and some of his most effective tracks are when his production is able to match that intensity. Bop doesn't fade in, it smacks you in the face. And to be honest, that first second of the song is such an incredible moment in itself. There's something about flutes that just really work well in rap songs. Something light floating well above a wide bass sound below is a combination that makes moving your body irresistible. Producer Jepsen, who is responsible for some of Dababy's biggest hits, seems to understand how to really make the rapper shine. His beats do a great job of helping bring out those memorable performances from him. Bop has a captivating beat, but it leaves space open for Dababy to carry it by himself. And that is what gives the track its replay value. There's a sense of restraint in the production that gives more attention to the performer. It gives the listener no other option but to become immersed with something that might not even seem catchy right off the bat. Alrighty, at number 2 we have Sacrifices feat. J. Cole, Saba, Earthgang, and Smino by Dreamville. So far, I've spent some time talking about what makes a really great rap collaboration. What it takes to not only get the best performances out of some individually formidable talents, but creating something cohesive and memorable overall. Sacrifices, the album closer from J. Cole's Revenge of the Dreamers 3 compilation, checks all of the boxes and then some. Everyone sounds like they're on their A game, and the beat feels like it could continue on well past the 6.5-minute runtime and still be interesting. And most importantly, there's just so much heart in the track. Sacrifices opens up with Johnny Venus of Earthgang, who serves as the narrator for the track, delivering the choruses and a few of the more sing-rap verses. Now, when Revenge of the Dreamers 3 dropped, this was the first track that I listened to. I was so excited to see the inclusion of Smino and Saba that I couldn't wait through the entire album to get to it. I thought it was interesting that J. Cole used the final track of the album to shine a spotlight on arguably two of the most underrated rappers on the scene today. And their performances on this track more than live up to that statement. Smino offers his signature smooth, fast, and slightly mumbly flow that is up to the quality of any of his verses that you would hear on his great 2017 album Black Swan. However, the star of the show on Sacrifices is Saba. The Chicago rapper has been a force to be reckoned with ever since his beautiful, heartbreaking 2018 album Care For Me. He has this ability to totally pour his soul into his verses. And he does this all with such creative and interesting ideas in his flow. The way he plays around with different rhythms and creates melodies out of the smallest moments. This is what makes a memorable verse. Last on the block is J. Cole, who sounds a bit like he's giving the closing statements of his album. There's a nice conclusiveness to his verse that makes it feel heartfelt. And then we get this jaw-dropping moment where he bounces back and forth on the same rhythm for what seems to be like an extended period of time until he cuts and leaves it to Johnny Venus to carry us out of the track. Sacrifices is such an easy track to connect with because of how well it evokes feelings. Everyone heard on the track is working toward that emotional, reflective goal, yet they all bring something different to the table. Okay, number 1, we made it. My favorite song of 2019. Feel Special by Twice. There's always a level of vulnerability that comes with sharing your work. Whether you write songs, stories, draw pictures, take photos, or talk about music on a podcast, the feeling is the same. You open yourself up to a world of criticism. The internet is such a massive collection of varying tastes and opinions that for all of the positivity you receive, you are bound to receive some negative attention as well. It's simple statistics. It might be in the YouTube comments section, or it might be from some dude venting his opinions on a podcast. Receiving criticism is an inescapable part of being an artist. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'd be a huge hypocrite if I said there was. But sometimes people can take it too far. Taking things too far is a recurring theme in K-pop. It's responsible for some of my favorite aspects of the genre. It's something that was immediately apparent to me after watching a few lavishly designed music videos with intricate subplots that connect to other music videos. And while I think that the overwhelmingly intense fandom surrounding K-pop idol groups is cool, there will always be some people that take it too far. Twice is a group that is no stranger to success. Ever since their debut in 2015, they've released a steady stream of smash hit pop bangers. They make bright, fun, cheery pop songs, and they do it better than anybody else, faster than anybody else. I even found myself really enjoying their hit Fantasy, which was released just a few months earlier in spring 2019. But with great success comes great expectations, and on Feel Special, Twice confronts the negativity that comes with their popularity. Following the release of Feel Special, JYP Entertainment, the company behind Twice, announced that member Mina would be going on an indefinite hiatus from all live performances due to extreme anxiety. Not only is this level of transparency between the label and fans regarding the mental health of one of their performers unheard of, but so is the way they tackle these themes on Feel Special. Translated into English, in Mina's verse she sings, "I just wanted to hide. Didn't want to face the world, as if everything has lost meaning, as if I have lost meaning, I just sat there still." This kind of dark lyricism is the last thing you would expect to find in a Twice song, a group known for exuding positivity. But perhaps there's a certain kind of darkness that they might know better than anyone else. Having the entire world watch your every move, being criticized down to a T for every performance you give and everything you wear when you go outside, reading hateful comments online, dealing with overzealous fans and possible stalkers. You have to wonder, is it really worth it? Or is it worth adopting this monastic lifestyle where you put everything you have into your career and then some? It seems like the only way to steer clear of this world full of hate and judgment is to just do nothing. So we have to ask ourselves, why do anything? Sometimes pop music can be quite profound in how well it simplifies things, because maybe these feelings of insecurity aren't quite as complicated as we make them out to be. Twice cope with the anxiety of their industry by focusing on how wonderful it is to feel special. This is a love letter to their fans and anyone who has ever supported them, and it sounds straight from the heart. This is what really makes facing all of the self-doubt and criticism worthwhile. Having those moments where you just feel special. The full English translation of the chorus goes as follows. "You make me feel special, no matter how the world brings me down. Even when hateful words stab me, I smile again 'cause you're there. That's what you do. Again I feel special. One moment I feel like I'm nothing at all, like no one would notice if I were gone. But then when I hear you calling me, I feel loved. I feel special." And to be honest, I don't see how that could not put a smile on your face. There's so much passion in the track. Combine that with some infectiously catchy songwriting and production, and we have an absolute banger. There was so many awesome little moments to take in the composition of this song. It begins with minimal drums and this 90s sounding techno synth bass, and then it builds up to the first chorus, but even then, there's some restraint from making it huge all at once. It comes down a little bit, the drums reduce to a bass drum on every beat, and then they introduce a synth horn on the downbeats. And then they bring in the full drums in the second half of the chorus, and you can really feel the increase in energy. This track flows so seamlessly, it builds and releases tension in a way that just begs to be played on repeat. So for me, making a top songs list will almost certainly lead to me talking more about pop music. And thus far you've heard me talk quite a bit about what I think makes an effective pop single. I think all of that and more applies to Feel Special. And there we go, we did it! I gave you my top 20 songs of 2019. I hope you enjoyed it. I just have one honorable mention this time. Old Town Road by Lil Nas X. You should really check that one out if you haven't heard it. I recommend it. And there we go, we did it. We're on YouTube. I've always wanted to say this. Please like and subscribe. I'll see you next time. We hear the members of Brockhampton...